Welcome back, True Seeker. It is April 4th, 2024. 56 years ago today, it was the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And a lot of people didn't notice what happened exactly 1 year to the day of MLK being assassinated. That was April 4th, 1967, the day MLK gave a speech in New York at the Riverside Church about how the thing that is really the source of the problems in the United States, including the racial conflict and everything else, was the nation's military policy and how it constantly had its young people at war and then bringing home the feelings of war, death, destruction, hatred, racism. He was saying this was the source of what was the problems we saw in society, the constant military involvement of the United States. And if you look into this, there's all kinds of short documentaries and friends of MLK who are speaking out or who have spoken out since about how they warned him not to give that speech April 4th, 1967, because they knew it was crossing a line with the U.S. government to speak against its military. So he had a lot of people reach out to him and say, don't you dare do this. But he did it anyway because he said he felt compelled to give that speech because it was the truth. And that's why a lot of people hate Martin Luther King Jr. Or that's not the reason a lot of people hate him, but excuse me. Let me rewind. A lot of people have learned to hate Martin Luther King Jr. for one reason or another. Um, Rumors of adultery, that he was a sellout, that he was a Mason. That's why he gave his last speech at the Masonic Temple the day before his assassination, the one about being to the mountaintop. He's been to the mountaintop. But MLK, again, you listen to his speech from April 4th, 1967. Again, 1 year to the day of his assassination. It's called Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence. And if you guys ever listen to my show, TFR, it always began with that audio clip of MLK saying, it's a time to break silence. Got to speak out about what's going on in the world, what needs to be stopped so the world can heal. So anyhow, look into that. If you've never done research on MLK's speech and what happened after he gave that speech, again, Lyndon Johnson condemned him right away. This wasn't long after Lyndon Johnson had become president after JFK's assassination in 63. And of course, MLK got assassinated in 68, the same year as RFK, which we've talked about many a times, the parallels. But yeah, look into what happened when MLK gave the speech April 4th, 1967. You'll see how Lyndon Johnson condemned him. Lyndon Johnson said he'd no longer be a guest at the White House. He'd never have dinner with the president and his wife again, all because of the speech against the military. And when you go to slave school for 13 years, pledging to 13 stripes, they don't teach you about MLK's April 4th, 1967 speech. Again, I went through the K-12 system, and then I went to college, and then I went back to school to become a teacher, and nowhere in any of that was I ever taught about MLK's April 4th, 1967 speech. And when I taught a fifth grade classroom about MLK's speech, back when I used to be a teacher in South Seattle, I got slapped on the wrist and was told to, just keep it to the dream speech, the same one everyone knows. A lot of people didn't get the joke, though, this year with the Key Bridge and what it had to do with MLK's I Have a Dream, which we'll talk about as well. But yeah, go back. If you don't know anything about MLK's April 4th, 1967 speech, listen to it. Some people say, oh, it's too boring. Do it on playback speed 1.5. You can hear it all fine and get over the boring thing and listen to the words of what he said. Listen to what he said. Listen to how many nuggets of that speech are true. Are you going to agree with everything? Perhaps not, but there's a lot of things in there that he says are super true and more true today than they were when he spoke them April 4th, 67. So anyhow, the reason I bring up this parallel and have this thumbnail up here with MLK, and then below him in the other black and white photo is Theodore Herzl, the founder of Zionism. He died at age 44 in 1904, 44 years before Israel was made a nation. And if you're new here, 44 is a special number. But of course, I have those two black and white photos looking at, what's going on today. You got Biden and Netanyahu meeting after the accidental killing, so we're told, of the humanitarian aid that was part of the World Central Kitchen Group, an accidental airstrike by Israel right after the Damascus bombing, which came the day after Easter, when it's Paul on the road to Damascus who's confronted by Jesus, who becomes a believer and great teacher of Christianity, going from a persecutor to a promoter. And again, I mean, Paul sees Jesus after his resurrection. Easter is about the resurrection. Israel has to bomb Damascus the next day. That the story of Paul getting converted is in Acts, which is the 44th book of Protestant Bibles. Again, a big theme here is going to be 44. And then, of course, the other photos, a guy who's living in Gaza right now. A rarity, because there's not a lot of adult males still alive in Gaza. It's a nation of largely women and children. But yeah, on this April 4th, on the anniversary of MLK giving this speech about how the militarism is what fuels the evil in the nation. If you're looking at today's headlines, CNN's even calling by now because they're saying, yeah, he's been talking tough against Netanyahu, but he's been giving him more and more bombs and equipment to do what he's doing. So saying one thing on one hand, but then with the action doing the other. While you're listening to the cheap talk over here, he's slipping them the weapons over here. And this is true for all administrations. Don't think this is some Democrat or Republican channel. It's not. It's a channel where we expose both sides constantly and show what a fraud our government is and how highly ritualistic it is, which everyone should understand. Again, this nation was founded by members of secret societies. A lot of them were Freemasons. Washington, D.C. is known as the Masonic City. You earn your rights, which are ranks in Masonry, spelled R-I-T-E-S. And the word right, as opposed to R-I-G-H-T, like your right hand or your natural born rights, like you have the right to not have somebody infringe on your space, and if they do, you have the right to defend yourself. But R-I-T-E, like the rites of Masonry, have to do with rituals. And that's why every day when you learn what we talk about, you understand why there are these number patterns, what a number like 44 means, and why it's all over so many assassinations, including JFK, the 44th term president, MLK killed on 4-4, Malcolm X killed on 44 date numerology, and so on and so forth. Like literally every U.S. presidential assassination has to do with 44. I wrote a book about this years ago, Letters and Numbers. And in that book, I talk about MLK, his assassination, his April 4th, 1967 speech, the 44 rituals they do with Israel. All of this stuff that I'm about to talk about today in 2024 is all in a book that I put out 7 years ago. Again, you can watch. We'll go over these things again, but there's a reason that these patterns persist and why this stuff is in focus on April 4th. Killing in Israel and Gaza, MLK assassination anniversary. And again, this little simple knowledge that the Masons are into. Again, those Masons who do everything ritualistically, they etch on the temple. All is number. Masonry is based in Kabbalah. Kabbalah states God created the world with numbers, letters, and words. The relationship of letters and numbers is known as gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words. Anyway, look at this. Look at this. If you're new here, 44. All of these things equate to 44 in gematria. Joe Biden, who of course was the vice president to number 44. Netanyahu. And, headlines about this from back when this happened in 2015 or 16, somewhere around there, when Netanyahu was at the United Nations and had his 44 seconds of silence and the media interpreted it as he was mad at Obama, number 44. And the next thing you know, Antonin Scalia is dead on the 44th day of the year. And there's conspiracy theories that number 44 had Antonin Scalia killed and people overlooked it was the 44th day of the year. By the way, in Gematria, the 44th day of the year is known as Lupercalia, and Lupercalia equals 44. So does Ranch, where Antonin Scalia was found dead while hunting with his secret society pals. If you want to look that up, those were mainstream headlines about Antonin Scalia hunting with his Catholic Masonic secret society when he was found dead at the ranch, not far from where Dick Cheney from the 44th state, Wyoming, shot his lawyer buddy in the face years ago back when he was the vice president. But anyway, 44 in Gematria. Joe Biden, Netanyahu, Israel, Zion. Again, the founder of Zionism, Theodore Herzl, died 44 years before Israel was established at the age of 44. Military's 44. Israel's a military powerhouse funded by the United States. Shooting is 44. That's what killed MLK on 4/4. And wars and militaries usually have a lot to do with shooting. A lot of words military related equate to 44. Officer, trooper, soldier, infantry, they all equal 44. The most interesting of those words, really, when you break it down, at least in my opinion, is soldier. SOL is like son in Spanish. SOL, it's like soul, son. Soul, it also has a sign like soul, like souls are being sacrificed for these wars. But then it has the letters DIE, like die. And then the last letter is R, which is the 18th letter of the alphabet. And in the US, you got to be 18 to be in the military. Again, Masonry is based in Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is considered Jewish mysticism. And in the Jewish study of numbers, 18 is the meaning of life. So you think about that. We get recognized as adults, even though it seems kind of arbitrary at age 18. That's the meaning of life number in the Jewish study of numbers. And again, soul, die, IR, sun, death, 18. How many 18-year-olds have died under the sun on the battlefield in history? And in Gematria, IHS equals 18, as does sun. The Jesuit order, the military order of the Catholic Church, who gave us the calendar we're on and the languages we know it back in the 16th century. And then they got suppressed, and then the Illuminati was founded by the Jesuit, and then this nation was born shortly after. And Washington, D.C. is where the Jesuits set up camp when they came to America. Anyway, make the same points all the time because there's a historical trail. There's warnings of what would happen to the Jesuits if they came out of suppression by Jefferson and Adams and other founders. And, of course, Jefferson and Adams died on the same day on the nation's birthday, 7/4, which we'll talk more about in a second. But all this 44 that connects Biden, Netanyahu, history, that the acronym for this World Central Kitchen, if you watch the media, is WCK. They put that up. WCK's even got the 44. If you're new here, Gematria, there are 4 base ciphers of the English language: alphabetic order forwards and backwards with numerology. And you follow this 44 number, you see how fateful the pattern is consistently. And every month we document this date that has a special 44 numerology, and almost every month we're talking about a dead entertainer, suspiciously, sometimes very young, sometimes very old. So often their name will equal 44 in Gematria. It'll be 44 days from their birthday. It'll be 44 weeks from when their album came out or their movie or their last show. Month after month. It'll be a former dead player, and they'll have to put in the article that he played in 44 NBA games. That was the case with the man who was dead in the news that we were talking about. And the next thing you knew, Kobe Bryant was dead in the news in an even bigger ritual. But this 44 number is huge with Zionism. It's huge with U.S. history. By the way, you guys, the first president to die in history, do you know what day he died in history? The first U.S. president? If you don't know this, the first U.S. president to die in office was William Henry Harrison, and it was the shortest president. He was president for 1 month. What goes down in the history book is Inauguration Day was so cold that he got sick from Inauguration Day, and then he died shortly after. He died April 4th, first U.S. president to die in office, 1841, at the age of 68. And there's a lot that can be said about all that, but we'll just stick with the April 4th, 4/4, fateful pattern, 44. And then this meeting today, again, this 44 number connected to death and destruction. They're talking about all the death and carnage in Gaza. And let's not forget what just passed either. It just passed March 22nd last month was the 44th anniversary of the Georgia Guidestones being unveiled. 10 rules for a new world, where the first one was to limit the Earth's population to 500 million. And then the last rule was be not a cancer on the Earth. Cancer in Gematria equals 44. like chemo, like kill. On that date, Kate from the royal family announced she had cancer. But Georgia, where those things were, Georgia's the fourth state in order of statehood. 4 is associated with death. 44 is the rep digit of 4. Georgia equals 44, like genocide equals 44. Remember what they did to Hank Aaron on the 44 date numerology, who wore 44. And the Braves went on to win the World Series. That was the 117th World Series they won. Truist Park equals 117. They'd renamed the stadium shortly before that season. Again, you learn these numbers, you start to see how rigged the game is. From something like this to Major League Baseball. And by the way, the leader of the World Central Kitchen has come out and said he doesn't feel like it was an accident, Israel's strike on his humanitarian aid force. And we pointed out before he even came out with those remarks how it happened 102 days from his birthday. And in Gematria, art of war equals 102. So does World War. 102 had a lot to do with Pearl Harbor. Just the other day, we got the headline about the last survivor of Pearl Harbor dying at age 102. And for people who don't know, look up Operation Amalgam Virgo, the federal government simulating Al-Qaeda attacking the U.S. June 1st, 2001, 102 days before September 11th happened. Art of War, the text, is translated by Sun Tzu. Or excuse me, I misspoke. Art of War is credited to Sun Tzu, but there's no proof of Sun Tzu ever existed. It was translated by the Jesuit priest, Father Amiot. Again, the Jesuits gave us the calendar, the language. A text like Art of War comes from them. Remember, 9/11, the year it happened, 2001. That year, September 11th, was 44 days after Tisha B'Av concluded. Tisha B'Av is to remember the destruction of the two temples. The two temples. Tisha B'Av in Gematria equates to 44, like Israel, like Zion. And don't forget that right before we invaded Afghanistan and eventually Iraq, the leader of Israel at the time was Ehud Barak, and he said that we must invade Afghanistan and Iraq like in the opening minutes after the attack. He was on national TV. He was being syndicated through the BBC about how we need to go to war with Afghanistan and Iraq, like almost as fast as the attack had happened. And that's exactly what we did. And again, the point is you learn this code, you see who's behind the United States. You see who's behind Israel. It's this same Jesuit Catholic empire. And people need to understand this because almost the whole truth community blames Jews for everything. And that is not accurate. Is Zionism a big part of this? Are there bad guys like Netanyahu? Of course. But that doesn't mean Jews run the world. You know, some people point to those Rothschilds. Look at what happened to the latest one, a perfect death ritual synced with the 87-year-old Pope. The Rothschild dies at 87. And again, Rothschild means red shield, which pays tribute to the Templars, who were the military order of the Catholic Church that were the original bankers. You look into the Federal Reserve's establishment, you can see it was a huge Jesuit ritual, just as so many things have been in this nation's history. That's who's, again, we're on their calendar. If Jews ran the world, we would be on the Hebrew calendar. Today would not be April 4th, 2024. Remember, when they killed Martin Luther King Jr. on this day, it was the 95th day of the year because it was a leap year, just like it is this year. The Jesuits were created to counter Martin Luther and the 95 Theses, the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther writes the 95 Theses. Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated on the 95th day of the year. 3 days later, the Club of Rome is established. Again, MLK would have turned 95 this year. His son died the very next day. The man who supposedly assassinated MLK, he died 95 days from MLK Day in the year he died, which was 30 years later. But yeah, we really need to think about these things, you guys. We really need to think about what we're allowing to take place, these rituals, and how far they can go. You know, a part of me hopes that they just keep doing this. Well, I don't hope that they keep doing this, but that their game just continues to move at a snail's pace. There's another part of me that worries that we've reached a crucial moment, you know, with the Georgia Guidestones turning 44. Everything we've been talking about when Netanyahu came back. He came back on December 29th as the prime minister of Israel. He returned, and we pointed out that day. We said, well, this is a weird day for him to come back. Has a big Jesuit connection. And of course, it's Albert Pike's birthday, the man who wrote the letter about 3 world wars, and the third to come being about political Zionism. And he published that letter in history August 15th, which is the Jesuit order's birthday. Again, put out a video the day Netanyahu came back, December 29, 2022, and we explained why a big war ritual was coming with Israel in 2023, around the time Yale would turn 322 years old. And what do you know? That war began 2 days before Yale turned 322. And Netanyahu officially declared war the next day, which was 1 day before Yale turned 322. It was 321 years old and change, like a countdown, 3, 2, 1. And again, Yale's important because it's older than the U.S. It's home to the most powerful secret societies in the nation, and they put a lot of people in high places. So yeah, this meeting today on 4/4, and you just think about what Martin Luther King Jr. said on this day in 1967. Again, 1 year to the day of his assassination. He said this military policy that this nation has just brings all this needless evil and death and destruction in the world. These guys are talking about blown up kitchen workers today on 4/4. But you know what? That strike, it caused those families tragedy and grief. Somebody had made them money. Somebody made that bomb and wrote that loan for all that to be possible. And they made some money on that. And then they're probably going to make a little more money because they're going to need to, pay to fix the property that got destroyed. This is the system we live in. And the reason most people are okay with it is because they have not experienced the day yet where a bomb rains down on their house for no reason other than to make a guy a few extra bucks. But that's the thing I wonder about in America with this third world war. If they're actually going to bring this thing, hopefully not sooner than we think, America's never gotten touched in the world wars. And I've been wondering for the last 20 years why they've been harping on about how further and further behind our infrastructure gets to the rest of the West. It's almost like they're just waiting for this place to get demolished so they can come back in and build it with the new latest and greatest smart city technology. Look how fast they can put up cities. I mean, engineering, construction, it's crazy. Look at what they do in China and Dubai with like these overnight cities almost. It's not quite overnight, but it's really fast how long they can build a massive site. And just like how it wasn't always white Europeans here in America, the New World Order could be shifting over who gets to control the land in the U.S. maybe it'll be expand out of San Francisco with Gavin Newsom, which has the largest Chinatown in all of the world outside of mainland China. And again, it wasn't one political party that got us here. It was both. It was a game they played. Again, Trump can print all the money, which is guaranteed inflation. Again, if you guys weren't watching my channel, I explained it right then before we even got our first stimulus checks. I said, see, it might seem nice right now for the person who's broke because of all the new policies. Okay, they're getting $1,000. That'll help anybody out. But I said, all this money printing, it's going to make all the money worth less in the future. So the guy who's just now retired in 2020 and he's got $500,000 to his name, if inflation, makes it so that something that was previously $40 is now $50, now it's like he only has $400,000 in savings. He just lost $100,000 on the net value of his savings for a $1,000 stimulus check. And that's exactly what they did to us. But anyway, you can see how the Republican Party now can just point at Biden and say, oh, see, this is happening in the time of Biden administration. Well, it's like, again, the way they teach you is the inflation thing, it catches up. It doesn't happen overnight, but before you know it, as time goes on, you have this massive inflation because you printed all these new bills. And again, imagine that like there's a stack of gold, and then these bills represent that stack of gold. If there's 1 million bills, say, that represents the stack of gold, if they just have to print more money to put stimulus out there to help people, but the gold stack didn't improve, now there's 1,300,000 in bills, but the same stack of gold, then the money's worth that much less incrementally. Before a dollar bill was 1/1,000,000th of the gold, now a dollar's, an even smaller fraction. So it has less value because there's more dollars, but same gold stack. Anyway, we were warned about all of this stuff by people at the beginning of this nation. Thomas Jefferson. I always, people say, well, Thomas Jefferson wasn't a good guy either because he had slaves. Okay. That's fine. I'm just saying, out of the ideas that he expressed, out of the founders for what goes down in the history books, he's the one that saw all the problems coming. He said you can never let a central bank run the nation. He said you have to have a revolution every 19 years, which I never understood. I read like everything I could about Thomas Jefferson, and that was always the weirdest thing. The revolution every 19 years. Nobody could explain it to me. I didn't meet anyone in my lifetime, no teacher, nobody who could explain it to me. I asked a guy who ran a bookstore. He wasn't sure why. Lo and behold, I should have went to a synagogue and asked a rabbi. They would have known right away. The moon is on a 19-year cycle. That's why the Jewish calendar, it's on the same days every 19 years. That's why COVID-19 came 19 years after the 19 hijackers. The 19 hijackers came 19 years after the war on drugs. So war on drugs, then 19 years later, war on terror, then 19 years later, war on germs. All those wars took away rights and liberties. 19 years before the war on drugs was the war on JFK. It taught people that if you go against the grain, there can be major consequences. People learn not to speak out. 19 years before that was the year the U.S. deployed the most troops to World War II, 1944, to bring us back to 44 and military and death and destruction and patterns and repetition. But okay, so that's that story for today on the anniversary of MLK's killing. Um, one other thing, that a predominantly black city in America that equals 95 in gematria is Baltimore. Again, MLK would have turned 95 this year on January 15th, 2024. His son died a week later. Martin Luther, 95 Theses. MLK, again, on the 95th day of the year. The assassination, paying tribute to the Jesuits and their history and their accomplishment and their foes, their enemies, their nemesis. MLK becomes a nemesis if he's speaking against the military. The Jesuits are a military order that leeches off of governments and taxpayers, like what we have here. And yeah, by the way, I forgot to even and make the point too, just about the Jesuits. Another huge number of theirs is 56. Society of Jesus, their formal title equals 56, like Washington, D.C. You have this happening on the 56th anniversary of his assassination in 68, this meeting in D.C., talking about some real evil shit that didn't need to happen, Now, with regards to stealing from taxpayers, did you guys see this one? Biggest cash heist in Los Angeles, 30 million, biggest since 97 when 18.9 million were stolen. And back then, 18.9 million was probably worth more than 30 million, because you consider around that time you could probably get a house for $100,000 or less that today's worth $500,000. So the only thing that's cheaper now than it was back then are TVs. They got to make sure they got the programming device in your house, huge, HD, hypnotic. They got to keep everybody hooked on the screen. But this heist on Easter, this happened Easter Sunday, the evening of Easter Sunday. Bank keeping money at their storage facility. You can just see the setup all over this. It's keeping 30 million at the storage facility. Sounds like a good place to hit a bank rather than the vault. But this happened in Sylmar. Okay, you see the 74 gematria? If you're new here, this is the number that showed me something was up. Holiday, 74. This happened on Easter. Jesus holiday, right? Jesus, 74. Like cross, like Messiah, like parables. Jesus spoke in parables, which are riddles. Like gospel. Jesus is from Judea. Jewish, 74. There's some parallels between what's described of Jesus and Lucifer, the fallen angel. They're both the morning star. They both have to do with light. Lucifer's the light bearer. They both have the 74. Albert Pike wrote in his book, Morals and Dogma, the importance of Lucifer and Kabbalah to Masonry. Masonic is 74. Occult is 74, meaning hidden. Like this little alphabetic code, ABC 123. It's hidden right in plain sight. Energy, 74. Like English, like Gematria, like London, like killing, like stabbing, like the 74th day of the year to remember the stabbing to death of Caesar in 44 BC. Last year, 1 year ago today, on April 4th, you had a dead 44-year-old pro cyclist in San Francisco, and you had Bob Lee stabbed to death, the man who created Square, a four-sided object, and CashApp. And again, that was the week that the Fed was certifying the FedNow system, and they had announced on the Ides of March to remember the stabbing of Caesar on the 74th day of the year in 44 BC. But that was the day that, again, it was the Ides of March that Fed now announced they'd begin certification for their system the first week of April. Again, just remember killing a Caesar in 44 BC. Bob Lee gets stabbed to death on 4/4, April 4th, a year ago today. All roads lead to Rome, Romans 74. Again, the difference with Roman and Silmar from the rest of this list is that's running the alphabetic order in reverse. Running it forwards, it's all 74. Killing and stabbing are 74, and you run it forwards. When you run it in reverse, the word free is 74. When you run it forwards, London is 74. Did we really get free from, England and the crown and London on 7/4? Or are we just part of the United Kingdom? The sun never sets on Britain. The sun, the object, so important to the Catholic Church that worships on Sunday. Again, as we always talk about, the 16th century, the Jesuits, the language, the calendar, the heliocentric model that says the sun's at the center of it all. The ongoing rituals with the deaths of entertainers' sons. You have one right here. This rapper loses his son on Easter Sunday. His name is Kevin, which equates to 74. You think of Kevin, you might think of Kevin Durant, who has a tattoo of Tupac on his body. Tupac equals 74 like rapper. Tupac dies on Caesar Borgia's birthday, where White Jesus comes from. The album for Tupac on the Cross Like Jesus comes out on November 5th, the important date of the Jesuits. But anyway, just these patterns, right? 74, Easter. It's a number that's connected to destruction. Essentially, a burglary is destructive. You might think, I'm glad it's not my money that got stolen, but in a way, it is your money that got stolen. Think about what's going on in the world. All these catastrophes happening in the insurance company might not have touched you. You might have been fine from the weather or whatever. Hasn't touched you, but your rates are way up because of all the catastrophes being reported worldwide that are changing things for insurance companies. Those things that are happening in places like California year after year, your rates are going way up because of it. If this bank is insured and the insurance company has to pay for it, that still ends up affecting your bottom line. And all of this chaos in the world is largely being orchestrated and planned. Again, people need to look into weather control and JFK's speech from back in 1961. He talked about the paradise of weather control. Well, think about it. Technology can be used anyway. Some psychopaths wanted to create chaos in the world to make them more profit and, serve their Georgia Guidestones prophecies of reducing the Earth's population. We could be understanding perfectly clear what's going on year after year as we document all these crazy rituals with weather. Maui got it last year in a big old 44 ritual, synced up with Joe Biden and number 44, who's supposedly from Hawaii, 4 days after Obama's birthday. Whack. 4, death, destruction, like 44, like Maui's 44. Maui's 44 forward, 64 in reverse, just like Joe Biden. 44, 64. Joe Biden showed up to talk about Maui on the 64th anniversary of Hawaii being a state. By the way, this town Silmar that got hit on Easter, it's on the 34th parallel and 118th meridian. I just want you to see how Jesus and cross are both 34. They're also 61. 61 is the number that represents the circles and the flower of life, which is the symbol that represents God in sacred geometry, whereas gematria, the practice going numbers and words, mean geometry and language. 34 is the 9th Fibonacci number. Fibonacci numbers are considered to be the sequence, the mathematical sequence of God, and Pythagoras thought 9 was related to God because of all of its special properties. Just for the record, Jesus Christ is 74 in that cipher, where Jesus and cross are 34. And you can see Jesus Christ is also 146, like John 14:6, one of the most famous verses in the Bible. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Again, you guys, numbered Bibles, English language, Jesuits, calendar, all this stuff was agreed to around the same historical moment. You can see how all of this stuff was so perfectly put together. By the way, this happening on the 118th meridian, just notice burglars is 118. Burglars robbed 30 million. Now, I know something interesting about 118. Typically, the 118th day of the year is April 28th. And in Ephesians 4:28, kind of like April 28th, 4:28, Prince had the 421 song, I Would Die For You, number 4, letter U, where used the 21st letter. He died on 421 on the Queen's birthday. Anyway, Ephesians 4:28, like April 28th, and to all this God says, you shall not steal. Not only is stealing a crime, but it's a sin. So, a very specific verse about not stealing has the 118 connection. Isn't that interesting? Again, if you're new here, that could be a coincidence, but you pay attention, you'll start to see how Bible verses do seem to be synced with dates and rituals, and then you can start to spot repetitive patterns. And then you can start to see who's really behind, making sure 30 million's in a storage facility for an Easter night Sunday burglary in Sylmar by the cabal that's been here from the beginning, doing everything by a 74 code. For the record, about DC being the Masonic city and Masonic being 74, George Washington in the same cipher as Jesus Christ is also 74. George Washington the Mason. Look into the mural on the top of the building in DC of George Washington in the clouds like he's Jesus. And in the basement of that same building, there's an open tomb for George Washington, kind of like how there's an open tomb in the world for Jesus. And you just think about, again, how in that same century, the Catholic Church, who gave us the story of Jesus and the name Jesus as we know it, also gave us the calendar, the language, and synced up this system. And you think about this nation and how its birthday ended up being arrived at July 4th. That wasn't at the beginning of the country either. That was something decided later in history. Just like how later in history, Inauguration Day was moved to January 20th, the 201st day of the nation's age, when the Jesuit orders 201, and that number's huge with their history. And just like how they moved it to D.C., which is not where the capital was, but that's where the Jesuits set up camp. The Jesuits made modern Freemasonry. George Washington was more favorable of the Catholic Church than other founders. By the way, with regards to the Society of Jesus and this burglary from a storage facility, this happened March 31st, which in a leap year is the 91st day of the year. You see on the 4-base ciphers, the Society of Jesus and storage facility both have the 91 connection, the 235 connection, the 71 connection. Exact same in all those ciphers. For the record, Catholics also 71. The tropics of this earth, 23 and a half degrees apart, just like the legs of the compass of the Scottish Rite out of France. Anyway, yeah, there's a few other things that are interesting here, but just really the 74 piece on Easter. By the way, 30 million stolen, that's a biblical number, right? That Jesus' ministry begins at age 30, plus the word Bible equals 30. And you think about how Jesus had 12 disciples and how when you pay attention to these rituals, it's almost like perfect circles each year rather than like what's the right shape that would keep going on and on. That's really how it is, I suppose. It's like a slinky, right? A slinky wire. It's circular, but it's also moving forward. That's really the way time is, and you just see how the patterns go. But a circle, 360 degrees divided into 12, like the astrological symbols or the months of the year, that's 30 degrees per slice. And again, the astrological wheel is a circle. So I think that's a big part of Jesus' ministry at age 30 and the 12 disciples. And then he's the son of God, like the 12 constellations of the zodiac around the sun. Okay. So yeah, okay. Moving on to the next story. I gotta move through this. Again, a rapper loses his son on Easter. We're always talking about the Jesus rappers, the humiliation rituals, the murder rituals, the same patterns over and over. And so often it comes back to 74. Like Tupac equals 74, like Machiavelli equals 74, like rapper equals 74, like Jesus, like cross, like Messiah, like the rest of that list, like killing. In this case, the name Kevin equals 74, and that's this rapper's birth name. He loses his son on Easter. Again, that movie they put out, The Fall of the House of Usher, about where the guy makes the pact with the devil. Well, it's actually him and his sister make a pact with the devil. And when she made that pact, she knew not to have any children, but the man didn't care and he had a whole bunch of children. And the devil explains that I'll give you this power for a time, but I'm going to come to collect. And when I come to collect, all of your blood will die before you do. So the devil lets him know that you're going to lose. Everyone who you love and who's related to you, you're going to see them die before you die. And again, it's a dark show, but you watch that show with open eyes, just the little things, the news stories they bring in, the Monsantos of the world and whatnot, the pharmaceutical killers, the little inserts in that story. Again, you see that this is more than just some kind of spoof. This is attribute to very much what is going on. And that's why you see stories like this so often. On Easter, his son gets gunned down. Like God gives up his son, Jesus Christ, with the big 74 connection. Jesus 74, Jesus Christ 74. This happened on Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday has the gematria of 44, like execution, like shooting, like kill. Right back to what we were just talking about. And there's actually a lot more that can be said about this. 331 is the 67th prime, like the date was 331. Blood sacrifice, human sacrifice, satanic, soul. They all have that gematria 67. This man was born on the 47th day of the year. 47th day of the year. Again, the killing comes 44 days after his birthday. I might have misspoke a second ago. Or maybe I forgot to say that part. Easter Sunday does equal 44, but this killing was also 44 days after the father's birthday. His birth name is Kevin Ford. 44 days later. He was 34 years old. Weren't we just talking about 34 with Jesus and cross? Rapper also equals 34. I just had it up here, right? Because this place that got hit with the bank burglary was on the 34th parallel. This hit was a 34-year-old rapper. Rapper equals 34. Black equals 34. One Love equals 34. Remember what just happened to Bob Marley? Same number pattern, you guys. Aston Barrett of Bob Marley and the Wailers just died on his 74th day of his age, on the 34th day of the year, right before the Bob Marley movie One Love came out. He died 11 days before the movie came out. One Love, or not One Love, but Black and Jesus are both 11 forwards and 34 in reverse. One physical description of Jesus in the Bible describes a man with hair like wool. People always get mad when I point that out. That is so dishonest. A lot of people say I'm a shill because of that one thing. It's like, does it not say that? I mean, it says it, right? Revelation 1:14 through 15 describes his hair like wool, darker complexion. Doesn't sound like he was totally black. Sounds like he was at least part black. There's a reason they're using all these young black men day in and day out, year after year in these rituals. But like I say, they'll factor it in other ways too. We've seen white people die in these rituals, Asian people, again, all the children of God, which is all the people of the world. But it really does seem that there's a quota for the amount of black people they got to do it. And it's a high quota because there's always a lot. And there was one, this young guy, you guys, yesterday, April 3rd, 3 days after Easter this year, is the anniversary of Jesus' crucifixion. And a young black football player shot to death. We talked about this yesterday. How he had all the right numbers that overlap with triclavianism, which is the form of Roman capital punishment with the 3 nails that Jesus got. His name was Luke. Luke is a book in the gospel. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. On Jesus' crucifixion, they had to do Luke in. On the anniversary, April 3rd. Again, that's typically the 93rd day of the year. Crucifix equals 93, like God, Son, like Nazareth. But just even reading this article, you guys, I mean, as you go down, right? Like, there's just things in there. In the story about the death of his son, right? That they link to a related article. Read more. 95 of the most unique names rappers gave their kids. Now, again, 95 is very special to the Jesuits. That's why they're recognized on September 27th by Roman Catholic Church, the day leaving 95 days left in the year. They did R. Kelly bit. That's the day that he found out he was going to prison on September 27th. Now they're doing Diddy with the same Jesuit-educated lawyer out of Georgetown at the same age 54, when Jesuit orders 54, like it was founded by John Carroll when he was 54 years old. Again, the Jesuit headquarters, the house of the Jesu at Building 54. 11 rappers who are still supporting Donald Trump. Black 11, Jesus 11. This story is on Easter Sunday, right? Just not understanding the numbers and how they're a language and they're used ritualistically and they're put right in front of the reader's face like that. And people don't even know why they chose 95 rather than 100. Somebody's like, why not just do 100? There's a reason they did 95. Dimebag Daryl and Vinnie Paul's father, dead in the news yesterday on Jesus' crucifixion. In my first book, I talk about all of the 38. You want to give an example of a 38 death ritual? Again, death, murder, killing, RIP are all 38. Go back and look at the death of Dimebag Daryl, assassinated on the stage in Columbus, Ohio on December 8th. It's so 38. And then look at what age his brother died at, 54. We've been talking about 54 a ton and what happened to Elvis's daughter at age 54 and so many others in these 54 rituals. He lost a son at 54. And now he's dead on the anniversary of Jesus' crucifixion. Jesuit Order 54, they're the Society of Jesus. It's not hard to see who's pulling these rituals. And yeah, so you got Vinnie Paul's passing. But yeah, Dimebag Darrell, it's one of the most 38 deaths of all time. And we just talked about the dead young football player, young black man, pro athlete, gunned down on Jesus' crucifixion anniversary. His name equals Jesus Christ. His name equals, well, again, just Luke going with the gospel. His name also equates to the Jesuit order. And notice he was born on March 3rd, right? He's born on 3/3, and then he dies on the Jesus crucifixion anniversary when the common belief is Jesus was crucified at age 33. Just think about it. I mean, this stuff is just so blatant. Same patterns over and over. Actor and comedian Joe Flaherty, dead at 82. One of his best remembered roles in Happy Gilmore. And you know what? He's dead on the 206th day of Adam Sandler's age. Sacrifice equals 206. 206 bones in the adult human body. Masonic temple in Gematria equates to 206. The body is the temple, the spiritual belief. Most people don't understand that or any form of spirituality. That's why they trash their bodies and don't respect it, give in to all these addictions and impulses. But anyway, Joe Flaherty, dead at 82. We're coming up on the Masters. Happy Gilmore's about golf. He died on April Fool's Day as a comedian. Date can be written 1/4 like 14. Golf is 14. With regards to him dying on the 206th day at Adam Sandler's age, it reminds me that tomorrow is the anniversary of Kurt Cobain being found dead. And Kurt Cobain died in 94. We call Seattle the 94 city. That's why they won their only Super Bowl in the 94th NFL season. And Griffey had the year of years in 94. And Bill and Melinda got married on the first day in 94. And then 94 days later, Kurt Cobain died in 94, which was 206 days before Bill Gates' birthday, when Seattle's the 206 area code. And again, sacrifice equals 206. And nobody knew who Bill Gates was before 94, the year Cobain died. Again, Cobain was connected to Seattle like Bill Gates. It was like a trading from the most famous rock star in the world at the time to this up-and-coming computer genius. And back in 2020, we really started to look into Nirvana's really monster song, Smells Like Teen Spirit, because it always had that weird chorus that nobody understood. But then we looked at that chorus in light of everything going on in 2020, including Bill Gates unveiling how he's helping poor African people by building big nuts for them to go in and get their blood sucked out of all day, and then he's paying them a decent salary for that. And I was like, why doesn't he offer that job in Seattle? Like, why is he such a good guy for having African people do that? Again, Africa's always got these strange disease and illness, getting tormented more so by these types of things than any other part of the world. Why Bill Gates is giving you this? Is GMO mosquitoes sucking their blood? Anyway, that was a Monster 206 ritual, Kurt Cobain. And right now, trying to get Sweet Lady to give me the blessing to hit the road for tomorrow, because right now the weather report for Seattle is not too bad for Friday. So if I can get Sweet Lady on board, head out to Seattle for the anniversary of Kurt Cobain and do some street teaching and see if we can get people interested in the information. And by the way, I have Kurt Cobain's deaths in my first book. If you guys have not read my first book, an easy way to get it in electronic form is just the ebooks tab on my website, Letters and Numbers. This book is nearly 800 pages, so it's not bad to have in digital form because it makes it easy to search through. You can type in Cobain. It'll take you right to all the places in the book where I talk about Kurt Cobain. But I know Kurt Cobain's death was a big 44 ritual too. Seattle's got the 44 Gematria. The Seahawks fell apart in their 44th season, finally going 50-50 at home, going 4-4. A lot of people think that April 4th was the day he died. He was found April 5th. Some people think it was days before that. But hold on. Where's the... I thought it was going to pull up the Cobain 44 post first. Jimi Hendrix died September 18th, 1970, a date with 44 numerology. And Jimi Hendrix started in Seattle, which equals 44, if you didn't know that. You know what's wild? I just thought about something. Where the group home is, the biggest group home in Seattle, it's called Ryther Child Center. It's on 95th Street, but it's also right next to Jimi Hendrix original home that he grew up in. I wonder if there's something about that. Tell you what, the people that run that Ryther Child Center are some weird people. I was talking about the 331 in Jimi Hendrix's death. Just familiar patterns all throughout history. But Kurt Cobain, from his last birthday, February 20th to April 5th, was 44 days later. And this post is from July 2016. I didn't even know reverse gematria when we did this post yet. We didn't find out the reverse gematria ciphers until the end of 2016. So this is probably about 4 months before I realized reverse gematria. So that's why I didn't have any note about the Seattle 44 connection. But Seattle in reverse is 44. So yeah, there's a lot that you can say about Kurt Cobain's death, and there's a lot you can say about the debut of the song "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and I think I have a post on that on my newer website. Let me see if you write just Nirvana. Let's see what pulls up. Oh snap! I went overboard. I need to wrap it up because I'm for everyone on the sports. I'll end this and we'll start the sports stream in just a few minutes. My bad. Went overtime. I'll save it for later. We'll do another stream on Cobain later. We'll go over all the best of the numbers on what happened to Kurt Cobain. Another cover up in history. Another 44 pattern. So yeah, thank you to everyone who hits the like and the share, you guys. And be back later today. And shout out Paula, the Kitchen Witch, again, who gifted another membership. I appreciate that, Paula. And thank you as well, Rick James, who's been doing it a long time. Thank you. And thank you, Ava Moon. She says, Zach, thank you for opening people's eyes, minds, and lifting vibrations with knowledge. 540 is the frequency of joy. The word love has the gematria of 54 too, so that is interesting. 540 and joy. I'll have to look that up. Thank you, Ava Moon. Christopher, Mr. Generous Christopher, says Atlanta 120, Oriole Park. That's a good observation. What we knew about Atlanta. I was overlooking the Orioles have that longer park name now, but that is the old school park name, Oriole Park. To double check that. Interesting observation. We'll see, Chris. Chris had a big old win with parlaying the World Series and the Super Bowl. Congrats to Chris. Mr. Scott says, Zach, thank you for putting me on the Albert Pike speech on World War III. I feel like it's going to be a big backlash against the time. I can't say that last part because the algorithm does not tolerate that phrase. Yeah, they got everybody divided. They got everybody divided and blaming everybody. The one group I never hear anybody talk about, those the ones that are actually pulling the strings on everything, the Jesuits. So that's what we got to change in the world. And yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on tomorrow if it's going to be a go in Seattle. And what would be nice is if people showed some love if I do go out to Seattle, because that's the one trend that too, it's like I'll be out there for 8 hours streaming and talking, and you think there'd be some more love shown in the world in terms of ways to support the work, because it's a 3-hour drive each way too. That's a 14-hour day for me. But like last time I was in Seattle, 14-hour trip. Gas is expensive out here on the West Coast. There was literally $25 in super chats until at the very end of it, somebody donated $100. And again, we don't get out there for the money, but at the same time, it's like, it's just a way to show, if in the time of that stream, over 1,000 people had watched it throughout the day. Imagine if half of those people dropped $1. You know what I mean? Resources to build something a lot bigger, like to get a full-time employee that works in Seattle each day in every major city, talking about the news by the numbers. We're getting imagine you could just have somebody out there with a setup, a big speaker, broadcasting news by the numbers, and also maybe adding in a few of their own pieces. There just has to be some grassroots movement to get this knowledge out to more people. This knowledge exposes what is going on and who is doing it like no other. And because of the algorithm and all the people that work against me each day, again, this knowledge is not reaching how it should. And it's too bad, because if we could rewind 5-6 years and continue to grow at that rate, we might actually be changing the world. But it's a different game now. The algorithm's super clamped down. The trolls are more tenacious and vicious than ever. There has to be a greater effort from the people who care to make more happen. The people who work against me each day, they're very effective at what they do. They scare a lot of people off from the work. They slander my name in a million different ways all over the place. They might get sponsorships ended overnight, all types of things like this, just because they're so tenacious and working with a dedicated team purpose. There has to be more people working consciously to wake up humanity and help get this information out. So thank you to all who do, and we'll leave it there for now. Until next time.